Welcome to the Risk Ruleset Map Creation Screencast. My name is Ryan Neufeld, or Jaffer for short, and I'll be walking you through using Inkscape to create your own maps for the Risk Ruleset. I've started us off by opening up the Inkscape client, and I'm just showing here the default map for Risk. See, we have here North America represented as Cassiopeia, South America represented as Cygnus, Africa becomes Orion, Australia becomes Crux Australis, Asia becomes Draco, and Europe becomes Cepheus. The first thing you'll probably notice is that rectangles are used to represent planets. It's also apparent that the color of each rectangle groups it into a constellation. Connectivity is indicated between planets with diagram connectors, and text labels are used in the same color as the rectangle fill to give a name and a bonus for that constellation. Now that we're familiar with the basic elements of a map, let's go on to create our own. See here we have a blank slate, and the way I usually like to start things off is by creating the rectangles. If you have this toolbar here on the left side of your window, you can click the rectangle box or press F4 on the keyboard. Now since constellations are indicated by colors, let's pick a color that's suitable. We'll start off by creating a few rectangles in the shape of the Big Dipper. Now I can either press F1, click the normal mouse button here to go back into manipulation mode. We can arrange these a little bit more prettily. Now that we have things in the shape we'd like, we can move on to naming our planets. To name a planet, we select an object and right-click on it, selecting Object Properties. If you want a shortcut to do this, you can press Ctrl-Shift-O. Once we've entered the Object Properties window, we see we have an ID and a label. We'll change both of these to the name of the planet. In our case, we'll name these A through F. So we change the ID, label, and click Set. It's important to click Set, or the action won't take. I'll give you an example in setting the second object and not pressing Set. So we set the second object to B and simply escape. When we go back, this time pressing Ctrl-Shift-O, we see that nothing has actually changed in the Object Properties window. So we'll set those again and escape. Now that we've labeled all of our rectangles, we can go ahead and connect them. Now you'll go to the toolbar here on the side, and we'll pick the one labeled Create Diagram Connectors. You can also use Ctrl-F2 to access this. Now, to create proper connections, we need to hover over a rectangle until the selector square is brought up. I'll click and drag over to the next object and make sure that the little box in the inside turns color so we know we're making a connection. Now, to check that we've made a proper connection, we can switch back to the normal mouse pointer and drag one of the rectangles around. You'll see the diagram connector moves with and reacts to where the two rectangles are placed. I'll show you what a bad diagram connector will behave like. Let's say I just created one that simply, excuse me. Now, for example, say we move this rectangle. You'll notice the diagram connector doesn't move with it. Delete that object. We'll continue on connecting the last few objects. There we have it. Now, to give the Big Dipper an actual name instead of the hexadecimal code representing the color, we'll pick a text box. And we go on to select the fill color. And we can just single click anywhere on the board. It doesn't really matter where you pick. I generally try to keep labels close to the constellations they represent though. I'll get text going here. We'll type Big Dipper. And then, to indicate the reinforcement bonus for that constellation, we'll place a vertical bar and any integer. In this case, we'll say 3. Now, to make sure that this label applies to the constellation Big Dipper we've created, press Ctrl A, or for those not keyboard aware, select all the text, change it to the identical color as our rectangles. Deselect that now. We have the Big Dipper here. And that will be the way things work. I can save this file now. I'm going to save it to my desktop as Big Dipper, SVG. We'll exit, Inkscape, and X11 in my case. Let's open up the config file we'll be using, and we will be changing the map file here. Now we can set this to the absolute path or the relative path, depending on how we want to run it. Slash, users, Jaffer, top, and we need the Big Dipper.svg. One of the most important things to make sure is that risk map report is on. Save that file now. We can load up TP server with that same config file. Launch the client. I'm assuming, of course, you've done these things before. If not, you might want to refer to one of the other screencasts we have using TP client and playing Risk. Notice there our objects window went by properly. As you see here, you have the Big Dipper, all the wormholes set up properly. Looks as if we've got the EE system. We can create a move order if we like. And that can take us to C, F, or H. Add. Don't think we own H, so we can add 2 units and tell it to complete that order. It looks as if we're off and running. This concludes the Risk Ruleset map making screencast. I hope you've enjoyed yourself and continue to use the Risk Ruleset in the future.